the 40,000 level is major. If that breaks, you go down to 30,000. And then if 30,000 doesn't hold, you should go down to 20 relatively quickly. If you look back at past cycles and you look back at 2017, it took about a year or so for Bitcoin to bottom out and put in the lows. And then it chopped around those lows for another year or so.
Although Bitcoin has gained over $2,700 over the past 24 hours, some technical analysts believe we have not seen the worst part of the crisis. Gareth Soloway, the president and CFO of InTheMoneyStocks.com, had previously stated that Bitcoin would need a year or two from November 2021 to bottom out and consolidate before it puts in another impressive performance. Soloway, who describes himself as a Bitcoin lover and bullish investor, has again stated that the coin will not make much of a headway in 2022 or 2023. In the meantime, Soloway believes that gold will outperform Bitcoin in 2022. He also believes that Bitcoin might soon test the $20,000 support level or even dip further. Welcome to Savvy Finance. In this video, we examine Gareth Soloway's $20,000 price prediction for Bitcoin in 2022, as well as his prediction for Solana, Cardano, Ethereum, and gold, which Soloway believes will outperform both Bitcoin and the S&P in 2022. Soloway also talks about the reasons why Bitcoin has not been able to hedge against inflation as many believe it should. This video promises to be quite enlightening. So ensure you watch it to the end, click the like button, and subscribe to the channel. Late last year, while the rest of the crypto community was agog with the possibility of a $100,000 Bitcoin, Gareth Soloway told interviewers that his charts were saying the opposite. Then Soloway explained that Bitcoin's past performance showed that massive uptrends are usually followed by a year or two of bottoming out and sideways consolidation. In a January 24 interview with Stansberry Research, Soloway repeats similar convictions. The investor explains that he will not be surprised if Bitcoin keeps heading downwards until it hits the $20,000 support level or dips even further. He adds that the cryptocurrency ecosystem is showing some inner signs of weakness that could further bring it down, while the equity market is faring slightly better. A correction in the equity market, Soloway adds, could further bring down Bitcoin until it dips past the 30,000 support level. Like Raoul Pal, Soloway sees some kinds of similarities between Amazon stocks and Bitcoin. He explains that many people have embraced Bitcoin for its potential. However, the hype around the ecosystem has created a bubble.
Let's start with your comments on Bitcoin, because the last time we spoke, you said, hey, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes back down to 20,000. Where do you stand today?
Yeah, I'm still in that camp. I still think that you can already see the inner workings of the weakness in cryptocurrency showing themselves, right? So if you look at the stock market, we've seen a general light correction in the stock market, nothing major yet, but you're down 7 to 10% on the equity markets, and you have Bitcoin down over 30% from its high. So you can see how if the equity markets continue to correct, which I do expect them to do, the deleveraging of the overall system will take Bitcoin down much, much lower. And again, going back to the .coms back in the late 90s, early 2000s, the cryptocurrency area is so similar to that. And remember, when Amazon came out of that period, it was a $5 stock after the .com crash. Look at where it is now. So, I envision Bitcoin almost kind of like that performance of Amazon, where it's going to get smoked. But if you buy it at these lows that you should see within a year or so, you could be it's a major opportunity.
I love how you explained that on the last episode, and for the folks who maybe missed that one, if you could go over that again, because what is it about the DNA of Bitcoin that mimics the stock, price action of companies like Amazon? Why are they similar?
Yeah, and it's a great question, because if you look at it, it's like e-commerce versus blockchain and Bitcoin doesn't seem to be similar, but in reality, look at what was going on in the late 90s. You had the emergence of the internet, where everyone was starting to log on. It was this brand new technology. It was kind of changed the world, and everyone was saying it's going to change the world. And here you have blockchain and cryptocurrencies, and everyone's saying, this is brand new technology. It's going to change the world, and that creates this hype, and it created it with the .coms, where people just rushed in. They paid any price because they thought it was going to change the world, which it did, but there's always a value to that, right? And so with blockchain and cryptocurrency, same thing has happened. Everyone has rushed in. They've kind of overinflated it to a big bubble, and now you have to have that washout moment before it can kind of rise like the phoenix from the ashes.
Soloway also talks about the technical. He states that he used to follow the head and shoulder patterns in Bitcoin, but he is now more focused on the breakpoints and support levels. So far, Bitcoin has dipped below the $40,000 breakpoint. The coin has also hit a 2022 low of $33,000. If the next breakpoint of $30,000 also gives way, then the coin will be heading right for the next support level, which is $20,000. Soloway states that these events will slowly play out within the next 10 to 12 months with the threat of deleveraging from the equity market. When the coin finally bottoms out at $20,000 or less, Soloway believes things will remain the same for another year before we begin to see the signs of an uptrend.
So in general, I'm focusing mainly on technicals, but I do use a portion of psychology in my trading. So one of the things when we were trading at the 68, 69,000 highs, one of the things that made me very nervous about that, and everyone was saying, oh, it's a breakout, we took out the April 2021 highs, was that you had way too much hype going on in the small investor realm. And you also had the ETF, right, for Bitcoin just launching at that exact time. It was on the futures, right? And if you go back to 2017, you had the launch of the futures themselves on Bitcoin. And that was also the high back in 2017. So you can almost coordinate these things kind of like astrology, right? But in many ways, it lines up. The hype was too much. And I just want to, I just got to rebut a little bit on the technical analysis side. Let's look at Bitcoin right now, right? So Bitcoin, it looks arbitrary. It's hovering around 40,000. Is this a level? Is it not? I want to just show you guys a couple cool trend lines. Basically, you take a trend line here, you connect it from the beginning of the move up that led us into the April highs, you connect it to this lowest point and look at where Bitcoin is hovering right now. In addition, when you had the big rollover here in April and May of 2021, and you started to get bounces, all the bounces went right up to 40,000 here. And if you take that line across, it gives you right here. So again, notice how you dipped down here, you bounced up, then you came back down up to 40,000, down and then up, and then finally you broke out before retracing to that same level. So again, just in terms of technicals, what I love about technicals is they don't care if, what asset class it is, right? It's all about humans are trading stocks, they're trading commodities, they're trading cryptocurrencies. And we are ruled by emotion, right? Greed and fear is what drives you to either buy or sell. And therefore, charts should be universal amongst anything out there.
Okay, so if you could just pull up that chart again, Gareth, because that's what I love about having you on the show. You bring
Absolutely.
bring your fabulous chair. Do you have any indication now of when that 20,000 level would be reached?
Yeah, so the only indication I have, and initially there was kind of a head and shoulders pattern. I'm not loving that as much anymore. But the one thing I am going to watch for is breakpoints, right? So the 40,000 level is major. If that breaks, you go down to 30,000. And then if 30,000 doesn't hold, you should go down to 20 relatively quickly. If you look back at past cycles and you look back at 2017, it took about a year or so for Bitcoin to bottom out and put in the lows. And then it chopped around those lows for another year or so. So I think if you look at the $69,000 high, you probably look a year out, 12, maybe 14 months out. And I think that's where you'll bottom out. And then you'll probably stay there for quite some time as you chop sideways. So again, I even think it could go below 20,000 if we do get a major stock market collapse as well. But again, I think at this point, 20,000 or just sub is probably the right target for me to go with it for now anyways.
On inflation versus Bitcoin, Soloway states that Bitcoin is a new asset run primarily by hype, and the ecosystem is littered with smaller investors. For Bitcoin to be able to hedge against inflation as many believe it should, Soloway believes that coin has to be widely adopted by more institutions and investors around the globe.
You barely ever touched the low end of the channel, right? For the most part, you were trading up against the upper band. All along here, you were up against it. Here, you hit it up here, right? It was always hovering against the highs. Look at what's happened to the S&P recently. It had the move back up, and then all of a sudden, it started to flatten out.
Moving on from Bitcoin, Soloway also makes some interesting predictions for Solana, Cardano, and Ethereum. He explains that Solana is currently trading off a key support level. If the line holds, the coin could make a recovery to $160. But if it breaks, it could head straight for the next support level, which is $80. He also warns that the oncoming crypto winter will wipe out many cryptocurrencies. To be safe, Soloway suggests that investors should limit their cryptocurrency investments to coins with the highest market caps, especially those with unique and promising technologies.
What's going on with Bitcoin versus inflation?
Yeah, so Bitcoin obviously being, in the scheme of assets, even though it is now what 13 years old, it's still a very new asset and it's still run by hype, right? So eventually it will start to behave more and more like gold, being an inflation hedge, but you have too much kind of pumping going on in the cryptocurrency sector. And that's why you're seeing these wild moves that aren't going along with the idea of inflation is high, therefore Bitcoin should be going up. You have to kind of wash that out. You have to see the asset become much more widely traded amongst institutions and really held amongst many people around the globe, just like gold is. And then you should finally see it. But it's too hyped right now. It has too many smaller investors whipping it around. And really, even the whales, I mean, there's a certain amount, a small group that control a huge amount of Bitcoin out there.
Okay, when you say pumping, do you think there's too many cheerleaders out there calling for these extravagant forecasts that are doing more harm than good?
Yeah, I mean, it happens in every asset, right? And when assets are popular, you see this kind of pumping where people go on Twitter and you'll just see people calling for crazy price targets. I mean, I still remember when we were at that 65, 70,000 range, is you had, it was going to hit 100 by November, and then maybe, these crazy price targets were getting thrown out there. So I think at this point, you have to just understand that that's part of it. As an individual investor, you have to recognize that, right? You have to say, okay, this is a little insane. I'm not going to chase it up here. I'm going to wait for it to pull back.
As stated earlier, Soloway believes gold will outperform both the S&P and Bitcoin in 2022. He makes a reference to gold's performance during the 1975 to 1978 inflationary period. He also states that gold has been consolidating sideways since its massive uptrend between 2018 and 2020. With the consolidation period over, Soloway sees gold making a massive rally in 2022 to outperform Bitcoin.
Yeah, let's take a look at Solana here. So Solana right now is trading just off of key support, right? So if you connect these short-term levels on it, and let me just erase these other lines, what you can see is if you connect this pivot low to this pivot low, it looks like it's kind of hammering on that support line. So Solana to me is near support. I think it might have one more little push up, maybe back to 160 or so. But I do worry that at some point it is going to break this trend line. And once it breaks that trend line, then you start to head lower. And you're talking probably down to about the $80 level. Now, I know that's shocking for a lot of people. It's not going to happen overnight. But if this line breaks, there's no major support on the way down until you get to about $80. Then once you're at 80, there's significant support there.
Is there one crypto that you're tracking that you think might have the biggest move to the upside?
I mean, for the most part, I'm a fan of Bitcoin, even though I'm not buying at these points. But I really, at this point, because I do believe you're into a point where you're going to see some sort of crypto winter, where you're going to see a lot of the cryptos get wiped out, and literally you'll see them go to zero and not recover. I'm sticking with the top like 10, 15, 20 of the cryptocurrencies by market cap, and I just really want to just spread my money out. I'm not smart enough to know a lot of the inner digital workings and the technology that, there's a lot of people out there that know more about that than me. That's where you would probably be like, okay, well, this is a unique technology in this crypto, so I'm going to put a little bit of money to work there, but I'm not really good enough at that to know that.
And I appreciate your humbleness there. Can we bring up Cardano for the folks?
Yes. Cardano definitely is one. It's actually performed really well recently. It really, really well. You've had this big move up just recently here. Notice where it stopped, right? So if we look at the chart here, it stopped right on this trend line. So you can see the previous pivot high right there. So that is resistance. It's around 163 to 164, $1.63, $1.64. It looks to me like maybe you could start to form an inverse head and shoulders here, which is a bullish setup. So the inverse head and shoulders here would be your shoulder, your left shoulder here would be your head. And then if you could pull back, let's say to about $1.20 and then see a move up, this now becomes a major breakout line right here, where if you can get a breakout, this could easily trade up to about $2.40, which is the next big resistance right there. So listen, I mean, we're skipping a lot of steps ahead here. It still has to form this right shoulder, but at least it has the potential with the 2/3 of the pattern already forming to potentially create that.
Okay, one more before we move on. Let's get Ethereum in there. If not, I know I'd get a lot of
Yeah, so Ethereum here. So Ethereum's interesting for sure. One of the things that I'm kind of looking for is further downside on Ethereum. I have a major trend line that I'm actually going to play as a swing trade if it gets there. It's right around 2,800, so it's not that far away. You can see that if you connect the beginning of this bigger move to the lowest point right here, that is a general price target for a decent bounce. So this would be one where I would actually be looking at it over the next week or so and expecting that if we could get one more flush in the crypto market in the near term, you could hit this level and actually buy it. And I think off of this level, you at least could make 10 to 20%.
While Gareth Soloway believes Bitcoin is a great investment for the long term, he believes it still has a long way to go as an asset before it matches investors' expectations. What do you think? Do you see Bitcoin hitting $20,000 in 2022? Please share your thoughts in the comment section below. Also, remember to click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications.